Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Champagne and JD. I'm Andrew Champagne alongside JD Fox. As always, we've got a great guest, and as always, while they may not necessarily need an introduction, JD, I'm going to give her one anyway because that is just the kind of guy I am. If you're following horse racing media anywhere as of late, chances are you have seen our guest somewhere, anywhere, or heard her on Horse Racing Radio Network. She does a lot of stuff with ABR. She does a lot of stuff with Fort Erie. She's seen, and rightfully so, as a rising star in the horse racing media scene. We're very happy to have Ashley Mailloux with us this week. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to talk Queen's Plate and kind of recap Derby with you guys.
It's going to be fun. There's a lot going on, and JD, I know, very much wants to get this next part of the show over with very, very quickly. This was not my idea, so JD, if you would like to sort of take the reins and steer us through this, that'd be just fine. I don't know what you have planned, if there's going to be a parade or confetti falling everywhere. I have no idea what's going on. Is there going to be somebody coming out of a cake at some point? I don't know.
I just want to say, when we started this show, when we did things like made our cartoon logo and Andrew's holding a pink sheet, like that was a little subliminal because Saratoga wasn't running at the time, and obviously with the pandemic, things kind of got delayed. But obviously Andrew was the defending pink sheet champion, which is why we chose to do that as part of our logo. And Andrew went ahead and repeated as the pink sheet Saratoga handicapping champion for the Saratogan. Andrew, great job. You came into the final day tied, and you picked a lot of winners when it mattered. And hats off to you, my friend. Great job. And I know that's a grind, and you've been putting in a lot of picks for your website and everything. So are you going to enjoy this break before Keeneland and the Breeders' Cup? Because I think that's the next time you'll really go day-by-day pick heavy.
Break? What break? We've got the Queen's Plate coming up on Saturday.
Well,
but
of course.
At any rate, thank you. I appreciate that. This was it's a labor of love every time I do this, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But if you've seen my picks, if you've read my stuff, if you've watched my videos, thank you. Know that I love you. Know that I appreciate you. That's why I do this. Hopefully I've helped you make some money, and if not, well, somehow you're back here, so you still trust me in some way, shape, or form. And the fact that you trust me after the Kentucky Derby, which I don't think I could have possibly gotten any more wrong, is a testament to something in the universe. And before we go much further, JD, I will give you some credit. Out of the three of us, and I think out of all of the people that we had submitting videos, picks, and prognostications, you were the only one that thought, hey, maybe Authentic can get the mile-and-a-quarter journey. Not only did Authentic get the mile-and-a-quarter, he did so below a Hall of Fame ride from Hall of Fame rider John Velazquez.
Yes, although with the caveat, Ashley, that I wasn't that good. I projected that the horse was either going to win in an upset or finish dead last. That was my opinion on the race, which was... It ended up being correct. Did I have any money directed towards Authentic at all in any way, shape, or form? No. So it was a surprise. But obviously, the gate played a factor, but not the Australian factor of the gate. It was all of the horses breaking out of the gate. And the other horse, obviously, that I've loved throughout this process, Andrew, New York Traffic, might have messed it up for everybody. But it was a good race to watch. And really, the other thing that I feel really strong about that I said was the strongest closer in the race was going to finish fourth. Now, I got who that was wrong because that ended up being Honor AP, and I don't think any of us saw that coming. But that was probably the horse I was most impressed with out of that race, Honor AP. Ashley, your thoughts out of the Derby? Authentic with the win, but was Authentic's performance the most impressive to you, or somebody else in the field impress you?
I mean, it's probably the most impressive the way he did it. I kind of liked Authentic. I just was kind of in the same camp as you. He'd either win it or he won it. I also loved New York Traffic. I really thought his performance in the Haskell gave me some more confidence in him because he was a horse that was just kind of hanging around for a minor share, and at least in the Haskell, he actually made a run late and showed a late foot, which he usually doesn't have. Obviously, the break out of the gate didn't go well, and it really hurt other horses in the field as well. But tis a law. I mean, he still ran his race. He did what he normally does. He gets that good position just a couple lengths off the leaders, and he just wasn't the best horse that day. So I don't want to take anything away from him. I know this kind of shaped up and kind of switched up the Breeders' Cup Classic rankings drastically. Tis law. I mean, I'm still having towards my top three, with Maximum Security and Tom's d'Etat. But I don't want to say this is going to sound bad, but the Derby was a good race. I guess I just wasn't super excited about it. I thought kind of looking at when they were kind of coming down the stretch and entering the turn, I was most excited about the third place finisher. I thought he ran a heck of a race at a big price. So still a great race, but for me, it's not going to be the best Derby that I can remember in the last 10 years.
Turning for home, Tiz the Law looked about 1-9. 5/16 of a mile to go. Manny Franco may or may not have done the look down through the armpit thing there, but turning for home, I thought Tiz the Law had Authentic's measure and just could not get by. That is not a discredit on Tiz the Law. You run second in the Kentucky Derby. You've run a really good race. He ran a 102 Beyer speed figure. Barkley Tag saying maybe he bounced a little bit off the Travers. I don't see that. I personally think maybe this horse just doesn't particularly like Churchill Downs. This is a horse that is 0 for 2 at Churchill, undefeated everywhere else. Authentic ran a very nice race. I thought 1.25 miles was well beyond his scope. He proved that it isn't. And I got to tell you, I'm hoping for a rematch somewhere along the line, either in the Preakness next month or in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Have to think one, maybe both of them are headed to the stud farm next year for the first breeding season of 2021, which would be in their 4-year-old year. But who knows? Maybe we see a rematch in the Preakness. Maybe we see a rematch in the Classic. Maybe we see a rematch in the Pegasus. These are two really good horses.
And the one thing I really want to close that out with, Andrew, is with Tiz the Law. I think a lot of us were forgiving the weirdness of the Triple Crown with what Tiz the Law was trying to accomplish with the Triple Crown and throwing a big race in the middle of it. I do think now that the Triple Crown this year ends up being very weird, and I think we're all hoping that we look back at 2020 and hope that this never happens again after what we saw.
Fingers, toes, and eyes crossed. And if anybody out there is listening that has the power for these things, please get the Belmont back to 1.5 miles this year. Just saying. Don't get any ideas. Don't get any of the, hey, this worked this one time, let's keep doing it. No. 1.5 miles Belmont, 3 races in 5 weeks. It's this way for a reason. Please. Love, Andrew.
All right. Now, I said this last week when we started talking about the Derby that we were a week away from the Queen's Plate, which is what I was really excited about. And the Queen's Plate is here. Obviously, the $1 million race, the big race at Woodbine, another race that's been rescheduled. It's been funny hearing Ray Pollock refer to it as, obviously, the Kentucky Derby the first Saturday in September and the Queen's Plate the second Saturday in September. It's just weird, but we're here. We've got a great field, and we'll go over the field quickly here, give you guys the full field graphics as we look for obviously going 1.25 miles on the dirt. We've got a field of 14, and they drew this morning. So we've got some morning line odds as well as we hit the second page here of entries. And Clayton will break out of the 12th hole and is the 2-1 favorite coming off of the victory in the plate trial, the $150,000 tune-up event on August 15th. So looking at that full field now, obviously we've got Ashley here who follows that circuit on a regular basis and does a great job with ABR as part of their Thursday Woodbine programming. We're going to go through and give each of us our top 4 contenders one by one, and you are not going with the favorite in your first spot, Ashley, as you've got a horse I like quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Halo again here for Steve Asmussen. Kind of looking at this horse, I've been high on him for a while. He broke his debut down at Churchill Downs on the dirt in a big performance there, and kind of seeing the path that he took. They brought him up here for a stakes race as a 2-year-old, and he ran obviously quite well. And just kind of looking at his progression for me as a 3-year-old, I like his performance last time out. I'm not going to take anything away. Clayton beat him, but I thought it was a pretty good second place, especially coming out of the Queenston before that and on the stretch out from the 7 furlong distance to 1 mile and an eighth. I think the other thing is I have confidence in Steve. We saw what he did with Tone Broke, and the thing that I like about Steve is if he's got the chance to kind of race through the series, go to 40 for the Prince of Wales, and then go back on the turf, he's going to do it. And this is a horse that I think, as long as this horse has a decent performance and comes out of the race fine, we will see this horse on the dirt, especially based on that race down at Churchill Downs. But Steve always has his horses ready to go at the prime time for these big races. And I know he's been high on this horse, and he thought he came out of the plate trial good. So for me, 5-1 is a lot better value than we're going to get on Clayton. And just because, Clayton beat him last time out, I'm not going to just think Clayton is just superior in that sense.
And I obviously like Halo again as well. Kind of gave that away in the open there. And the thing I really like in the first time, this year at 1 1/8 was horse almost rebid late going down the lane against Clayton. It wasn't quite enough, but you did see the effort there. And I do think this horse wants the distance and likes the distance. And going back to liking Woodbine as well. The Coronation Futurity was a very impressive performance. Came from a little bit off of it, expecting to be a little bit closer with our pace scenario that we'll continue to talk about as we go through the horses. But I have Halo again on top, again at 5-1, as you mentioned, and a really strong contender in this year's race. And Andrew, you going with the horse that we've mentioned.
Chalk is my favorite food group, so I like Clayton on top in the Queen's Plate. Kidding aside here, Clayton has done very little wrong. This is a horse with 3 wins and 4 lifetime starts. I liked the win last time out in the plate trial against a lot of these. I thought he was considerably best that day, and I also think he's got enough distance pedigree to make me think 10 furlongs will not be a problem. I think he sits the 'Tis the Law trip. I think he rates outside just off the speed, 2 or 3 lengths behind what I think is going to be a pretty solid pace. More on that later. That's called foreshadowing, kids. And I think Clayton is going to be the one they have to catch turning for home. I don't think they can catch him. I think Clayton is a legitimate morning line favorite. You'll see I'm not all that high on Halo again. I'll go into that a little bit when I talk about him as one of my underneath horses, but I like several others more, including more foreshadowing, a really, really big price.
And I think I want to get into that right now, Andrew, because you called yourself almost in a way a chalk-eating weasel, and we want to give you a chance to recover. So you have a big long shot in your number 2 spot on the board.
I do. JD, this might sound familiar. I have 2 theories about this race. The first theory is Clayton should not lose. The second theory is Ollie, my boy, hits the board. I think Ollie, my boy, wanted to go long on synthetic his entire career. He caught a slow-paced 2-back, and he couldn't catch Mighty Heart, who also shows up in this race, but there was no pace that day. None. And he's a very deep closer. Last time out, he gets the pace that he wants, he rallies to break his maiden, and does so getting a pretty good number. I think there's going to be a solid pace signed on here. I don't think we're going to get anything insane, but 23 and change to the quarter, 47 and change maybe to the half, that's not all that slow when you're talking about this synthetic surface. I think Ollie, my boy, is going to be moving the right way late. He's distance up and distance down in his pedigree. He's by a Belmont winner, out of a mare, by a Derby winner. I think there's a lot to like at a gigantic price. He's 30-1 on the morning line, and I got to tell you, I toyed with putting this one on top. I think he's very live, and I think he is a horse you have to use at a minimum in the exotics, and it wouldn't shock me if Ollie, my boy, rallied for all the marbles on Saturday.
And talking about that pace scenario, we do have an early pace projection out from Timeform USA, and they have this horse, Tecumseh's War, as the likely pace setter in this race. And what's interesting about that, when you actually look at the numbers, is at first call, Tecumseh's War has never led in any race, but has never really broke cleanly. And what we're going to see for the first time in a couple trips is, really, I think an outside draw that is going to be favorable. Now, two starts back, obviously there was an outside draw, but it was 9-hole. I think this horse just being as far away from the rest of the competition as possible, having Clayton out in front in the 12th hole, that's going to break well, maybe not take the lead, but break well. I think at this point, Tecumseh's War can actually get a solid break. And if he does, I think this horse has a chance at wiring this field, but it's all about that break. And we have not seen a really clean break in a really long time. We haven't seen a clean break probably since back at the fairgrounds, and that was a clean break out for the horse, but then immediately got hit by another horse with a big brush. So Tecumseh's War is interesting because I think there's a lot of talent here for the Ontario bred, but can he break out of the gate? It's a great question that remains unanswered at this stage. And Ashley, your second choice is the likely post-time favorite, Clayton.
Yeah, I think he'll go off favorite. I mean, the filly could, but I really do think he'll be the post-time favorite. I think Andrew said it best, right? This horse has really done nothing wrong, and last time out, he finally got a class test. That was probably my biggest thing against him going into the play trial. I mean, I still liked him, just not at that price, just because who did he really face? I mean, he wasn't facing great horses. And looking at his races, yes, he had those 2 wins already, but I thought the plate trial was a big performance from him. I also think, looking at the way he broke in the race, it wasn't the way you'd want to break out of the gate in that trip that you'd want to get early on, but he fared fine. And I think the pace scenario, I'm torn on how this will go. On paper, I don't think anyone is very quick necessarily. I think there are a couple horses that would prefer to be towards the front. So I'm not sure how the strategy is going to come in this race. It's always kind of different each year. I don't think they're going to let anyone walk on the front end. I certainly wouldn't, especially over that surface. I just wouldn't let anyone walk and get an easy lead. I think, kind of talking about both of your horses, these were horses that I was looking for in like an exotic wager, especially the trifecta. And I think my concern with both of them is how they get out of the gate. In the case of Ollie My Candy, looking at his races, I just think Ollie My Boy, excuse me, now I'm confusing with the other horse in the United States. Looking at him, I mean, he's broke slowly in both of his starts, right? And he's still hit the board and he's won. That's just concerning in general, especially on this stage with 13 other horses in the gate. It's a bigger field, it's a different dynamic, and I think position's going to be key. And, you already talked about it with Tecumseh's War. I mean, he's another one. So these are horses for me that I'm going to use underneath, but I actually thought it was kind of chalky as far as the top 2, even the top 3 horses in the field.
Yeah, and you mentioned the filly Curlin's Voyage, and likely the second choice 5-2 morning line. Very talented filly. Interesting stage here with the fillies in this race in September. Early on in the season, I like the fillies a little bit more than maybe this later test against the boys.
Yeah, I think kind of looking at the fillies in general and just seeing how fillies have fared in this race, I always think of like Lexi Liu, right? She's the one that really stands out to me. And fillies have done well, depending how the crop is that year. And we've seen the same thing, in the Kentucky Oaks, Kentucky Derby in the past, just how they perform. It's a toss-up in general, or just anything that's on the Triple Crown Trail. And the same thing here. For me, even thinking about Wonder Godot, another one to consider, I thought the fillies were pretty strong, and I'm excited that they can come to this spot with the way the calendar fell, with the Woodbine Oaks being not the same time frame. You can prep for both of them. It worked out really nicely. And for me, Curlin's Voyage, I mean, she's really done nothing wrong. She's got 9 races under her belt, which is a lot more than most of the field, or a decent amount of runners in the field. She's a 5-time winner. I thought last time out, it was a pretty big performance from her, and the trip that she got, it actually worked for her. So for me, I think both the fillies have a huge shot. But I also think that the 2 that I picked, to me, might just be a little bit better.
Yeah, and I'm next here, and I've got Clayton. We've obviously both already talked a lot about Clayton. The one thing I will add is, and again, this is early on, and again, we're recording this Wednesday night, so literally we got PPs about an hour and 20 minutes before we started recording. So we know these horses, but we want to study them against each other, because it's tough to compare video to video when you don't have all of the notes in front of them and in front of you and all the past performances. What I will say that's interesting to me in the preliminary time form US pace projection is that Clayton is right next to Tecumseh's War. And I know, Andrew, you're looking for more of a stalking trip from Clayton. I think Clayton is served better by a stalking trip, but if Clayton wants to try and get an early lead and gets an easy lead, as Ashley said, if any of these horses get an easy lead on the front end, the way this track has been playing this year, I mean, they're gone. And even historically, but this year especially, anybody easy lead in this race, they're going to be gone. So Clayton, third choice there, but very interesting given the pace scenario. And Andrew, I'm going to throw it over to you, and you're going to talk about the filly Curlin's Voyage.
Yeah, Ashley mentioned a lot of things that I was going to talk about. She's won 3 of her last 4 starts, and she was clearly best in the Woodbine Oaks last time out. She showed a new dimension that day. She's always wanted to come from a little bit off of it, but she was well back that day and rallied to win pretty impressively. I'm not as impressed by the fillies as Ashley is. Perhaps Curlin's Voyage is good enough to win this race. She will certainly be bet like it. She's 5-2 on the morning line. There's a slight chance she goes off favored, but the 5-2 odds hit me as a little bit of an underlay in this spot. That's not to say she can't run well. I just prefer my top 2 on top, and Curlin's Voyage may very well be good enough to win this race. If she does, she'll knock most of my tickets out. And JD, that also applies to my 4th place finisher, another horse that both of you have talked about. That's Halo Again. Halo Again is a horse that I have been waiting for a very long time. he did something that's very difficult for 2-year-olds to do at that 2-year-old age. Won at 1 1/8 miles. And ever since then, he's been seen as a big-time Queen's Plate horse. He gets here for Steve Asmussen. There is stuff to like. The more that I look, though, and I'm going to pose this question to both of you, am I crazy for thinking he's a better one-turn horse than he is a two-turn horse? Because he's run really well going 7 furlongs, and when he's gone 2 turns, it just seems like a little bit of the punch is missing. Furthermore, 5-1, I don't think we're going to get that. I think he's going to be down a little bit to about the 3-1, 7-2 range, and maybe he's good enough to win, but at that price, he'll have to beat me doing it. I'm throwing him in underneath as a defensive type of use, but the question that I'm going to ask both of you again, am I crazy for thinking there might be some distance concerns here?
I'm not super concerned with the distance. I think if you look at his races and you watch the video and you look at the past performances, you can kind of draw that conclusion, right? That maybe he's better at one turn, and just based on his record alone. I do think part of it will come down to pace as well. I actually, thought last time out he showed some of this kick. He was outfinished in the end by Clayton, but he still had more drive than he usually has. Sometimes where he's fall flat, Turfway Park, I know they're changing the surface there, right? And Turfway Park, you do see horses sometimes get a good trip, but they just flatten out of nowhere. And I think he did have excuses. You kind of look at the horses he faced there. Field Pass, very respectable horse. It was a big field of 11. He still finished 4th to round out the Super. I didn't think that was a bad performance. I actually liked that they gave him the test there in the Jeff Ruby Stakes. At least he got a grade 3 under his belt, but I'm not convinced that he's not a 2-turn horse. I just think, with the way Steve kind of prepped Tonebroke for this race last year and looking at this horse, one of my concerns with some of these horses, and it's not all of them, especially if these horses have, had those races down at Tampa, like Barb Minshall's did, Sid Attard's horse, they had those Tampa starts. The way the calendar was affected at Woodbine has played some sort of a mind game to me, at least, just because at least Halo, again, got that start in January. Got that start at Turfway Park. Yes, he's pretty spread out, like every 2-3 months between his races. But when, COVID hit and Woodbine wasn't opening when they usually do, because they usually open, April, May, that all got pushed back. They didn't open until mid to late June. That really kind of changed their structure and how these races are going to get the prep races. So, he might have distance limitations, but I'm not convinced. I think others in here certainly have distance limitations and won't get the 1 1/4 miles.
The one thing I think I can agree with you there, Andrew, is half to inflexibility. A very strong horse, $500,000 earner in the career, and you hit it. 1 1/8 miles, absolute top of that horse. There is some concern there, but I think against this field, and I think with the placement and where Halo again can be, I do think that make the distance. We were talking the same thing about Authentic last week, and it seems to be a very similar case.
Ow, ow, ow. That wound is still fresh, JD. Just saying.
Okay, so I have a horse in my 4th spot that lost pretty badly to your number 2 selection, Ollie, my boy, in a maiden race, and came back and broke the maiden on turf. But I like the progression we're seeing out of Holyfield, who's a big shot here at 30-1. Finally getting that win, and it took 1 1/16 miles on the turf. The one big difference here is obviously Emma Jane Wilson has been on every time, and that's not going to be the case in this race. But I do like the progression from a pedigree standpoint. I think this horse can go a long way. Started at 5 furlongs, ran a couple 7 furlongs. This horse is bred all day, so to run all day. So I think as we get longer with the races, we're going to see more out of Holyfield. And what's interesting, and I don't think as somebody who follows this circuit as closely as I do, I never thought in this big of a race that I would have 2 Catherine Day Phillips horses in my top 4. I'm still calling Tecumseh's War a Brad Cox horse until at least there's a couple more runs. I don't know, but that's at least how I'm giving it to myself. Obviously, Catherine Day Phillips, a very capable trainer, but not a high-volume trainer. And to have 2 horses in this field is pretty impressive going against some of the barns and some of the big-time operations that we're seeing in this race. So Holyfield is my 4th selection. And Ashley, to close it out, you have the other filly.
I do want to circle back, though, to Tecumseh's War. Don't quote me, but when I went to Fairgrounds for the first time in February, Joe K over at Fairgrounds, he decided to take me around the stable area, show me some of Steve Margolis' horses for Brilliant Racing, and he also said, let's go see Brad Cox's horses. So I'm like, yes, Monomoy Girls there, British Idiom, and Covfefe. I was talking to him, and he asked me a little bit about the Canadian Triple Crown, and he referred to that he had a 3-year-old, and a newly turned 3-year-old, and I believe this was probably the horse that he was talking about, and obviously there was a barn change, but he seemed to think that this horse would fare well up on that circuit, and especially would be okay over the Tapeta as well as maybe the dirt. So it'll be interesting to see where this horse ends up. But yeah, I went to the other filly. And typically I'm a little harder on fillies at kind of this level and more critical of them. But looking at her, the thing that I like about her actually a little bit more than Curlin's Voyage is obviously the price, but I think the distance. I think she's going to be able to close, especially depending what the pace is. Now, she's usually not super far back, but last time out she was. She was able to kind of, get herself together, and she only missed by 2 1/4 to finish third. Did I think she'd probably run second in there and beat a Fleet Catherine? Yes. But for me to see that she was able to kind of overcome that trip where she was having traffic issues, but still was game in the stretch and wasn't so close, I liked that. I mean, she's been forwardly placed in the past. If you look at the race 3 starts back at a mile and a 16th, that allowance race, she was right there at the front and kind of just took over, and it was a pretty easy win for her. So, obviously, you look at the riders, Rafael Hernandez was going to take Clayton. That's not shocking. He had options here. But for me, from a value standpoint, I use the fillies 3rd and 4th, but depending what the odds are, and that's the great thing, just look for the race. I may actually put her a little higher on tickets than Curlin's Voyage just because of the price. And if I still handicap this more, I'm going to wait until, I use DRF, wait till my past performance come out and watch replays more. If I think the pace is going to be quick enough, then I definitely will move her up higher on my tickets.
I'm still hurting from the Lassie Stakes in December. I have no idea how Curlin's Voyage got up in time. I still don't. I've watched that race 1,000 times. I have no idea how she got caught. I might have lost a lot of money.
Still breaking your own heart.
Might have lost a lot of money there. So that might be, again, and I'm kind of agreeing with you. I do want to do a little more video work, and I might change my tickets a little bit. It is a very intriguing horse. I'm more intrigued on this horse than Curlin's Voyage, but obviously has been running second fiddle in the 2 big races against Curlin's Voyage in the Oaks and in the Lassie last year. But very interesting based on the race shape, and we all agree that we're taking a very rudimentary approach in the race shape, and that's where we're really focusing on the horses, and we don't have a good idea of the pace scenarios and so on and so forth. But that is not going to stop us from giving some preliminary, and I will say preliminary, exotic wagers that you can take hopefully to a bank near you. And we're going to start, obviously, if you watched the show last week, we're going to do this. We're going to progress. We have exactas, trifectas, and this week I'm the only one brave enough to roll with the superfecta. I thought everybody was going to do a superfecta last week, Andrew, because they're down to a 10-set wager. But no, Andrew, no thanks to the superfecta. So we're going to start with exactas, and actually, Andrew, I am going to put you in the driver's seat because we have not heard from you in a little bit here. You have a $3 exacta play for $30.
I do, and this is how I'm going to play this on a budget of about $30. I'm not going to get too cute here. Clayton, to me, is probably the most likely winner. I need to throw Ollie, my boy, in there as well because that horse is 30-1 morning line and would be a gigantic price in the exotics. 8-12 with a whole bunch of horses underneath, 2, 6, 8, 9, 10, and 12. $3 exacta runs you $30. That's a nice, easy way to spend the $30 budget. I'm not going to overthink this too much. I will also, though, have a win wager on Ollie, my boy, especially if he goes off anywhere near that 30-1 morning line price. I cannot stress this enough. The faster they go early, the more that horse figures to like it, and I think he's going to be rolling in the right direction late. Again, 8-12 with 2, 6, 8, 9, 10, and 12. And JD told you only half the story because, yes, he threw it to me probably out of pity because I hadn't talked in a little while and I'm an egotistical maniac who needs to hear the sound of my own voice. But that's my only play. So now JD gets that out of the way and he and Ashley can actually focus on making some money.
Yes, so Ashley has 2 wagers here, and really it's an exacta key with the horse that we both like, Halo again, up in the key position. So I'm just going to kind of roll through both of these as you talk about them because they're 2 tickets, but they're very similar, as you guys will see.
Yeah, I mean, I love Halo again. Like I said, I've had this horse kind of ranked at the top for me. So just because I think the horse should run 1-2, in my opinion, if everything goes well, gets a good trip, I'm just think these are the most logical horses. I used my top 4. I didn't think, I'm not saying there can't be an upset, but there wasn't a horse, there wasn't an Ali, my boy, for me, like, Andrew likes. There just wasn't. So for me, if I can get near 4 or 5 to 1 on Halo again, I'll be really happy. Probably 3 to 1, 4 to 1 range is more likely, but if the 2 runs second and I get a 6-2 or a 2-6 exacta, I'll be happy. I mean, I do think 10 to 1 on Mailloux. I think that she actually might float up. I really do think she will. Just especially if more money goes on Halo again. I mean, Clayton's going to take money. Curlin's Voyage will definitely go off at a lower price than the other filly. So I'm just hoping to get, the 2 home for second would be great, a 6-2 exacta. But I could see there, the distance limitations maybe is slightly concerned. I'm not super concerned about it, but I do think the horse is a top 2 player. So yes, I'm going to bet a ticket that one's a loser, and I do this all the time, but, hopefully I'll get a good payout.
Again, I'm rolling also kind of with a $30 overall budget in mind, so I'm going with a $1 try here with Halo again and Tecumseh's War up top, and then sandwich Clayton in between in the second spot, and obviously Mailloux and Holyfield, who I talked about already, Halo again, Curlin's Voyage, just in case I'm very wrong about that horse, Clayton, and Tecumseh's War again in the final position here. More of a straightforward kind of caveman trifecta than I normally do, Andrew. I'm usually crazy with the cheese whiz, as we always say on this show when it comes to supers and tries. But after some I don't want to say ridicule last week, but just
an intervention.
Okay, I won't single a 48 to 1 shot in parts of a super again at the Kentucky Derby. Okay. Thank
you. You may as well have just handed your money to me. I might have been able to get some use out of it.
The problem is, then I went on the ABR stream, and Ellis Starr completely agreed with me and had the exact same style of ticket, which made me feel good for about 20 minutes until the race actually was run. So we were both all in and all out on this. Now, Ashley, you have a trifecta as well, and very similar to what we talked about with the exacta. But the third spot, very interesting.
Yeah, so I'm probably going to get ridiculed now hearing that comment from Andrew about not carrying my coverage down from my second spot and dropping it, but I'm trying to limit the ticket cost. So I will say, if people were playing this ticket and you don't want to play the dollar base wager, well, you have the 20-cent minimums up at Woodbine. So you could get the coverage and get around the same ticket cost by cutting it down to 40 or 60 cents if that's what you want to do. I just kept it as $1. Also, I would totally single a horse, even if it was the Derby or anything, if it was a price in the 3rd or 4th spot of a super. But anyway, back to the Queen's Plate. For me, I mean, obviously I'm using those same top 4. I'm using the 6 and the 12 on top because I do think they're the most logical winners. And then using my 4 choices for second. And then I went price shopping. A horse that we really haven't talked about is Dotted Line, who I think, kind of looking at the performance of the plate trial, was 3rd, was the pace setter in there and kind of gave way in the end, but only missed by half a length. This is a horse, I don't want to say he's quick, but he does have early foot. I kind of looking at his races. Well, 3 of them, 2 of them resulted in wins. They've been on the front end. So I'm not saying, he's going to make the lead, but I think he's going to want to be towards the front. So I think he could be a part of the pace scenario, even though I don't think he's the quickest horse on paper. So for me, I think he's a use underneath. He's definitely not a key, but I'll use him for 3rd on a ticket. If I was playing a super, I'd definitely use him for 4th. And then the 14 we talked about, Tecumseh's War. Kind of looking at that last performance, that was the big takeaway for me. The Queenston really didn't fare well, and we talked about this, and I thought the stretch out from 7 furlongs to a mile and 16th, it was a good performance. Wasn't, good enough to put him any higher on a ticket for me, but I'll use him underneath. And then I don't think we've actually mentioned this horse at all, Belichick, who I know has been kind of highly regarded and talked about before both of his starts. Looking at the turf race, they were only going 7/8. He was 3rd. He was well defeated, and you see the winner there, Cheryl Spite, who was hopefully going to go in the Derby, then had a minor issue, and they look like they're regrouping him. I believe he might try to go towards the Preakness last I heard. So kind of seeing how that'll fare for him. I mean, Charles Spite's a pretty nice horse. Came back to win again quite easily. And then last time out, yes, I'm using a maiden for third in this race. He, got the lead late and then was just second behind Ollie, my boy. Flattened in there. But I thought, new surface, going longer, not a bad performance by any means. You do see maidens sometimes stick around for a third or a fourth in here, and it's not uncommon to see him in the spot. So that'd be a big price for me. I was really struggling to look at the horses that were in that 30-1 range, somewhere near there, for third, and to me he stood out. I think the only other one that I kind of considered a little bit was Holyfield.
And the other thing I'll mention with Dotted Line is for, I want to say the last 4 weeks at Woodbine, I think with how hot the jockey has been, I think people are just blindly betting Justin Stein and his bounce because it seemed to go off below odds. And obviously he's been in the battle in the 1-2 spot at the jockey standing. So just something I wanted to state and stress here as we load up my super, which I accidentally put on the screen earlier. We've got a lot of coverage in the 3rd and 4th spots. This is a bit crazy. I do have Ollie My Boy on there. I had this ticket before Andrew's love of Ollie My Boy, just because if I like Holyfield, I have to like Ollie My Boy. If you look at past performances where the two horses have raced against each other, I obviously have thrown Dotted Line in as well in that 4th spot. Other than that, it's my trifecta. So no sense going any further into that. Again, we're sitting here Wednesday night. We just got PPs. Ashley doesn't even have her preferred PPs, so we're putting these tickets together and in good faith and giving you guys some good opinions on the horses themselves, and we'll finalize some tickets on Saturday after scratches. Hopefully there are none in this field, and we'll put some adjusted tickets out there on the internet. Just wanted to make sure we cover our bases, but if any of these tickets hit, then we're just geniuses and we were right and our gut was right, and that's the bottom line at the end of the day when it comes to Queen's Plate. One of the biggest racing days in Canada. Quickly, talking about the Queen's Plate, obviously they're making a big push for Queen's Plate at home. There's going to be a full Instagram live experience for those that are used to a big day with Queen's Plate. And obviously, we're going to have coverage on ABR. Myself and Ashley are going to be on the preview show on Friday. I'm going to be also on the show on Saturday. We will have the feed as well on that show to show the Queen's Plate. As in the U.S., TVG will be other spot to watch it. So just wanted to make sure to get those things out of the way before we get into final thoughts. Our wonderful segment where we get to say anything we want that I think I completely forgot to tell Ashley existed on this show. But hey, sometimes we just got to roll with the punches. So we're going to make sure you're last because I have.
There you go.
I'm really bummed about something, and I think Andrew knows where I'm going here. But a friend, trainer, and owner, Stephanie Erb, posted some pictures. She visited Turf Paradise, and they are no longer keeping up the track. There have been a lot of rumors about the future of Turf Paradise, and even to an extent the future of Arizona racing. And seeing the track, the condition that it's in, the upkeep of the facilities, I'm not saying it can't be recoverable because they didn't apply for 2020, 2021 racing dates yet. They're looking at running only in 2021 once the pandemic in their eyes is over and it's safe to have people at the track. But definitely, if you have a chance to see those pictures on Twitter, you'll see what I'm talking about. Just sad as an Arizona horse racing fan and somebody with close ties to some of the horsemen and some of the track employees and announcers and everybody, the racing office staff, the horsemen, the HBPA locally here in Arizona. Just kind of a sad day seeing that. And seeing what could be happening to our racing, which has got a long and pretty storied history. But between this and the Monarch signal dispute and a lot of things, we could be also with it seeing the end of advanced deposit wagering and wagering in general in the state of Arizona. Our wagering laws require live racing. So if we don't have live racing, that may go away as well. So, just support the local tracks, support the local horsemen. That's my big takeaway from this. I think we're going to see a lot of Arizona horsemen. Obviously, there's been a lot in Colorado running at Arapahoe, as they normally do, and they're kind of looking for their next spot, probably going down to New Mexico. We could see more going up to Canada if their border restrictions lift a little bit more in terms of how quickly you can travel back and forth. It's going to be really interesting to see where the Arizona horses end up in the short term with no Turf Paradise meet in the future. But I don't really have a good way of wrapping that up, Andrew. I'm just kind of sad about it.
I mean, the best way I can wrap that up is that sucks. I mean, it's not like I have experience with tracks in my backyard going from a circuit that you really value and appreciate and hammer to not existing. But the one relevant story that I've got in that vein is I moved to Southern California in October of 2013, and that was right before the last meet at the old Hollywood Park. And I made one trip there. I made one trip to Inglewood to go to Hollywood Park. I remember the horse Teddy's Promise ran and won in the feature. Really cool horse trained by Ron Ellis. But the first thing I saw when I walked into the facility, I looked up, and the old photos of Hollywood Park had the placards of all the Hollywood Gold Cup winners, and it had so many really cool horses up on those placards. Lava Man won it a couple of times. His placards were damaged in a fire and were not replaced. That stuck with me for 7 years. That's the image I have of Hollywood Park. I don't have it as the home of the lakes and the flowers. I don't have it as the home of racehorses like Citation, like Seabiscuit, any of the other great horses that have seen action at Hollywood Park. I remember the placards. I remember that. And that is something that has always stuck with me. And in seeing the photos that you sent along from Turf Paradise that are on Twitter, that came rushing back. And JD, for as much as we kid, as much as we clown around, and Ashley, you've seen some of this leading up to this show, the one thing that we'll never, ever take dispute with the other is the passion that we have for this game and the drive that we have to try to make sure that it succeeds and that it grows. And seeing photos like that, it's really depressing, man. And especially in your situation with everything that's going on in Arizona, I'm so sorry.
And of course, Andrew, you have to bring up Lava Man, who of course debuted at Stockton, my home track, which is also shuttered. And my other home track as a kid was Bay Meadows. So yeah, there you go. And I wasn't there the day Lava Man ran sixth in a maiden claiming race at Stockton, but I wish I was. And that was the field. That was the whole field size, Ashley, because at Stockton, generally on the fair circuit there in Stockton, you capped out at 6 or 7 horses. So yes, Lava Man ran really bad in the debut at a horse track that you probably did not know existed. So see, I found a positive spin.
I've heard of Stockton. I've heard of a lot of racetracks. I've been to way too many of them. Yeah, that's still not positive. I felt like this final thoughts would be like a really good pep talk, and it's just absolutely depressing.
I mean, I can give you one. I haven't given mine yet.
It's the mood has already been set, which this just kind of like circles. You know, I've been to tracks that have closed. Beulah's been one, Suffolk Downs, and that one always floors me because you look at the location of Suffolk and you think, why can't a racetrack make it outside of Boston? Like, you're talking about a huge city and they couldn't make it. And actually, I love Suffolk. I thought one of the coolest things is the paddocks on the apron of the track. And you can just, go there and see everything you need to see, and you don't have to go to the other side. And you feel for the horsemen, but I guess my only relation to this and segue out of like the very depressing stuff, and it's still depressing, is a lot of people first off assume that I'm Canadian because I have a French last name, but I'm American. I live in Buffalo. So, there's 1 month left in the meet at Fort Erie, and I'm usually there most of the days, and I haven't been there once this year. I haven't been there since February. And I think kind of tying that into Turf Paradise, which I've been to once, I think it was like 2004, so a very long time ago. It's not just the racetrack and the racing and the, it's more the people. We love the horses, and the horses, there's two things that always stick out. People ask me why I like racing because they make the assumption that I just like to, gamble my life savings or just like to pick winners and like brag about it. But you could take the gambling aspect away and I would still love racing just as much. It'd just be a little different because the horses, and the other thing is the people. It's the grooms, it's the ticket taker when you go to the window that you've seen for the last 20 years or since you were as a kid, and they recognize you. And I think the racing community not having that right now or not being able to go to Fort Erie is just like so sad for me. I talked to the racing secretary for like 50 minutes yesterday, and her daughter was on FaceTime, I think, with, her husband, her dad, right? And I was like, oh, you can go. She's like, no, we need to catch up. And that's the cool thing. Like, racing that community becomes your second family, or in some ways, for some people, it is their family. So, you have to feel for, I saw the pictures at Turf Paradise. I liked them, not because I wanted to like them, but it was a sad thing to see, like the paddock and kind of the walking ring. And you can see it's not taken care of now, and the track itself. And you feel for everyone that's their livelihood, not just their career, but it's their livelihood. That's why they get up in the morning, not just for the track, but for the animals, because they love them. You also feel for the patrons. I mean, think about all the people that have been going there for how many years, and that's their fun thing to do, and go socialize with people. You see that at every racetrack. You'll see people that have been going there for 50 years and they still sit at the same spot. So very depressing, but it's tough. You can always hope that hopefully they'll figure out something, especially in the case of Arizona, because that's a bigger issue. It's deeper. It's not just live racing, but it affects ADWs and things like that, and just wagering in general. But it's always tough because usually once doors shut, we all know they rarely reopen.
The most OTBs per capita in the United States, Arizona. So that's a big part of it as well. Retirement community, there's a whole bunch of people that they live not just at that track, but at that OTB, making their $2 win bets every single day. That's how they choose to live their retirement. So we'll leave on more of a positive note. Obviously, Queen's Plate on Saturday. It's very similar to Kentucky Derby. So if you forgot to dress up for the Derby, if you didn't get your glamour and glitz out, there's another opportunity, and there's going to be a great time on Instagram Live with the fashion and fun side. But then we're going to have the serious racing over on America's Best Racing, and happy to be part of that. And Andrew is going to be firing away on the whole day, and we'll probably have some pick four sequences and so on and so forth. I mean, there's a guaranteed pick four that starts in the Queen's Plate, and there is I believe, not just a guarantee. Yeah, and there's a pick five that ends in the Queen's Plate. So you can start a pick four in the Queen's Plate. You can end a pick five, and that's a $200,000 guarantee on the pick five that ends in the Queen's Plate. And the pick four that starts in the Queen's Plate has a $350,000 guarantee, again, on a 20-cent base wager. Andrew, yes, you love 20-cent base wagers, don't you?
I do, and I'm really happy you brought that up, because you know what we get to do? After all of that nonsense and all of the things we brought up that really, really suck, I get to end the show on a positive note. I love 20-cent multi-race exotics. I think Woodbine gets that absolutely right. That is not something that could work at every circuit around the country. It works, and it works really well here at Woodbine, especially given a lot of the field sizes that they get. You can get a lot of coverage for not a lot of money. Pick threes, pick fours, pick fives, 20-cent minimums. And by the way, almost everybody is playing for that 20-cent minimum. So the disparity that you think you're getting for payoffs, it's not as big as you think, because there's still X live combinations for X amount of dollars. The math works out in your favor if you're playing for that 20-cent mutual. So I will absolutely be firing. I really like Woodbine. Every time I play Woodbine, I think to myself, I need to play more. Ashley, your thoughts?
I feel like I'm in like a virtual classroom. Like, now I relate to the poor kids these days. I got to raise my hand. Like, excuse me. I'll just say in general, 20 cent. I know some people don't like that as a base wager, but we also do it at Fort Erie. Other tracks do it in Canada. And I think in terms of a pick four or pick five, the key thing with Woodbine, for example, is going to be the field size, because you just have massive fields, right? Which also, might, if you want to play a 50-cent minimum like you would, it gets expensive, and you're kind of, cheaping your ticket out, and you're probably not cashing the ticket because you couldn't, make that sort of ticket cost. But I will say, I think I've noticed not only at Woodbine, but Fort Erie, if you just beat the favorite in two legs and you're getting second or third choice, and then maybe you get one price horse, you see a huge return. For example, I'll just use this last Tuesday at Fort Erie. The pick five, I believe the 20 center was over $1,000. I think it was close to $1,200. And I went 4 for 5. The only horse I didn't have was a 15-to-1 shot. But everything else was first or second on my sheet, I believe. So they were logical horses. I think the other biggest price was $9, and everything was kind of chalky. So it's just about, the field size, and can you beat a couple favorites? Because a lot of people, we know this, maybe they won't play the 20 cent. They'll play $1. They'll play more because they think they're getting wise by singling a heavy favorite, and they get beat.
before we let you plug everything that you can plug, Ashley, I have one more plug on 20-cent base wagers. Obviously, they also apply to Australia. So our sister podcast, and Away They Joe, this week I'll be on talking the Flemington Quaddie on Friday night here in the States, Saturday in Australia. But it's a Queen's Plate version of Away They Joe. Robert Geller on with Joe this week. So going to be a lot of Queen's Plate information out there, and excited with one of our favorite podcasts and good friend, and Away They Joe. Tune in. We're going to drop that episode tomorrow after we actually record the Quaddie stuff, which we haven't yet. But that's a preview and a prelude. Ashley, you're obviously all over social media doing all sorts of things. Andrew covered some of them at the beginning, but tell people where they can find you, tell people what you're doing, and give them all that good information.
Sure. So easiest way to find me is on Twitter, Ashley_Mailloux. Good luck remembering how to spell it, but it's up on the screen. As far as things coming up, obviously I have an ABR show on Friday. I do a couple other shows for ABR. Our Woodbine Live just wrapped up. This is kind of our last big one of those, but we do have some special shows for not only the thoroughbreds, for the standardbreds at Woodbine Mohawk Park. So at the end of the month, it's the Mohawk Million. It's the inaugural race for that. So going to be co-hosting that with Robert Reed Jr., who writes the Horse Players Journal up there. Other than that, I'm handicapping right now Monmouth Park for the Twin Spires app, so providing selections for them. So the meet has been extended. The Meadowlands meet's going to be at Monmouth, so that'll go until about late October. Horse Racing Radio Network still just did some races for them. Not sure what the fall holds for big classic races in general. Really depends on COVID, but hopefully we'll be at the Breeders' Cup at Keeneland. And then as far as other things, Sport Area, got about a month left in the season. And yeah, there might be some other opportunities, but it all kind of depends on how COVID shakes up the next month. But hopefully I'll be in Maryland in early October.
Two things really quickly. First, shout out Chris Griffin, track announcer at Monmouth Park, friend of the show. Really happy for him. Hope he loves New Jersey. Secondly, Ashley, I think I butchered your last name right off at the top of the show. Full disclosure, everybody, I have cousins with the last name of Mailloux, and as it turns out, it's a different pronunciation, so I look like an idiot.
No. So this is my disclaimer. So this is my third summer at Fort Erie. So prior to that, I always went by Ashley Mailloux to everyone. But that's really not how you're supposed to say it because it's French. So my first day in the paddock, Frank Salive, our announcer, said, and it's Ashley Mailloux. So I'm like, oh, get to like redevelop myself and become a new person. So still friends from high school are like, is this the same person? I'm like, nope, just new person completely. So yeah, I've been Ashley Mailloux. It's fine. I still say it sometimes, but it's Ashley Mailloux. That's why, I think JD got a little clever with his graphic today, right?
Mailloux win a lot.
Yeah, see? Funny.
Yeah, he does that. That's something that he is crazy like a fox for. Huh?
All right, on that note, we had the Andrew victory celebration. You take the catchphrase and get us out of here.
All right, for JD Fox and Ashley Mailloux, I am 4-time Pink Sheet champion Andrew Champagne. Good luck this weekend. Stay off the beaches.
Take care, everybody.